Okay, now we are live recording.
Yeah. So I don't know. Good evening, everyone. So this is our first paper, and the title is pseudo real using non-photorealistic images. So let me explain you the basic idea. I'll be explaining the basic idea using this paint tool that I found online, and the experimental results I'll directly point out in the paper so that the delivery is very fast. And so to begin with, I first want to come back to the thing of why catastrophic forgetting happens, right? So I think this is very important to understand because then you'll get a clear idea of how we are trying to solve the problem. So assume we have a neural network NN which has been trained to classify 0 and 1. It knows two classes, 0 and 1. And let's assume this is a feature space, x1 and x2. So what happens? Let's say this is class 1 points and these are class 2 data points, class 1 and class 2. And this is the decision boundary that you get when you trained it on the old data. So let's call it DO. But now, let's say we get a new data, something like D new, or let's call it B, a new batch of data, and we are trying to train a neural network in it. So what happens? It is what happens when we train this is the weights get updated in such a way that the decision boundary is no longer this. It changed to something maybe like this. And this is our new decision boundary. Because it got trained on B new, it has now changed to D new, and these points which were previously able to classify are now forgotten, right? So everyone is comfortable with what is catastrophic forgetting and everything, right? If anyone is if unaware of it, please stop me. Okay, so coming to the main thing, how generative replay or a technique called generative replay try to solve it is something like that, something like this. We have a solver network which tries to solve, let's say, classify something. It has been trained on MNIST digits. And then there is a GAN network or a generator network which has also been trained on MNIST digits. When we want to learn a new task or a new batch of data, let's say MNIST fashion, what generative replay proposes is the GAN network will generate synthetic samples which will be interleaved with the new data and then given to the solver network. So if you see it here, what we are expecting to happen is something like this. This is the decision boundary, the D old one, and this is the old points. I mean the actual data. With generative replay, what we are trying to do is we are trying to generate synthetic data that is close to the actual data, something like this. The blue one are the newly generated synthetic data points, whereas the green one is the actual old points. So what we are hoping will happen is when we train the neural network on these synthetic data, the decision boundary won't get distorted. When we interleave these synthetic data with being new and then train with it, the decision boundary won't be distorted to a level like it won't forget anything. That is the whole point of rehearsal and pseudo rehearsal. Here we are generating synthetic points, right? So what is the problem with generative replay is, first thing, it is the when we are using it in image classification setting, it has to generate highly photorealistic images. When we are generating it for something like MNIST digits, then it's completely fine, right? It's easy and it has been demonstrated even in the original generative replay paper. But when we want to generate something like fashion, the network struggles a bit. Then, but then after 50 or 60 folks, it even manages to generate these things. But then if we move on to much more visually complex data sets like CIFAR 10 on ImageNet, generating these photorealistic images becomes almost very difficult. Generating them because a subset of those mathematically possible images make sense in the physical world, and generating them becomes very challenging and also very, very computationally expensive. So generating photorealistic images is the first challenge. And second challenge is it also has to generate visually diverse images, not just images that look that are photorealistic, but they also have to be visually very, very diverse. Only then, if the data points are both closer to the original data points, which means they are visually realistic and at the same time diverse enough, visually diverse enough, when we rehearse the network on this data set, the decision boundary will look something like this approximately, not exact D old. D new will look approximately like D old and will have a similar classification capacity without forgetting anything, right? So that is the I mean the basic assumptions of generative realism. We have to generate both of them. Photorealism should be a part. Photorealism should be the first constraint, and the second constraint is visually diverse images. And as we all know, generating those is not at all easy. Generating photorealistic images, even for ImageNet and CIFAR, is difficult, and generating visually diverse images is like it just compounds the problem. And even okay, we can say that there are few there are few papers that have generated visually uh, very complex images, but uh, all of them require constant human in the loop and require very, very substantially high computational resources, which is not uh, I would say advisable in continuous learning setting where we don't have that much time to incorporate new information. So what we are proposing is something like this. Let us say you want to generate uh, a let me tell you the philosophy of our this thing. We want to generate synthetic data that results in the same decision boundary, right? Assume something like this. These are the synthetic data generated by GAN, right? So we are assuming that when we train on these samples, we'll get this decision boundary which is equal to the old decision boundary. But there is also another way. Let's assume we generate samples like this. These are class 1 samples and these are class 0. Okay, assume this is class 0, class 1. When we generate samples like this, what will happen? And when we train the network on these samples, we will all again get the same decision boundary exactly as DO or very close to DO. Let's call it D star when we train the network on these samples. So now what is the interesting thing here? When we are trying to generate these samples that are closer to the original points, they have to be visually diverse and also they have to be photorealistic, right? 2 points. We are assuming that when we generate these photorealistic and visually diverse points which are closer to the original data, we'll have the same decision boundary. But we can do the same thing by generating points like this. If you follow my cursor, you can see points like this. When you train on these points, you will get the exact same decision boundary as it was previously, that we got previously. So here, what I'm trying to emphasize is that the synthetic data does not have to look like the original data, but the synthetic data should have the same properties of the original data when trained upon. So rewriting it, we want synthetic data which when rehearsed upon will result in the same decision boundary. We are hoping that through generative replay, if we generate photorealistic images, we will get this same decision boundary. But we are saying that we can generate synthetic data which will result in the same decision boundary. So you may start wondering how that's possible, right? So consider this case. Consider this very simple case. Let's say the same feature space is somewhat like this. Excuse me. Okay, and okay, assume now I want to generate synthetic data which when trained upon will result in the same decision boundary as this network previously trained on. This was trained on B old data, right? We want data. So assume we have the neural network which was trained on 0 and 1. Now we want the synthetic data which when trained upon will result in the same decision boundary as B old. So I don't know how many of you have seen this before, but it's like a brute force method to generate synthetic data. Let's say this is a feature space x1 and x2. Now, if I want to expose the decision boundary that this neural network has learned, one simple thing that I can do is I can start generating all the possible points that are possible between x2 and x1, billions of points like this. Considering if we take image classification domain, if we will generate all points between 0 to 255. And now, after generating these billions of points, if I ask the neural network something like, dear neural network, please classify all these points. These points do not have any labels. So it knows two classes and it will classify them something like this. All the points here are class 0 and all the points here are class 1. Okay, these brown points are class 1, green points are class 0. So when you do this, automatically, if you see a beautiful pattern has emerged, when you train on this data set, when you rehearse this neural network, when some B new comes on this data set, the decision boundary is still there. This is because we have completely filled the space with all the possible points, and then we have simply classified them using this neural network, and we got this using it's more like a brute force way, I should say. So one key thing is this synthetic data that has been created is of very high quality. I guarantee you, if you train your neural network on this data, it will retain the decision boundary, no matter what. But the biggest drawback is the size. You'll have billions and trillions, I don't know, even trillions of points in that, which makes it completely infeasible. You cannot generate those many points and you cannot ask the network to classify all of them, and it's a headache. You cannot do all of that. So what we need is an educated brute force method to expose points which when trained upon will result in the same decision boundary as B old. B old. We want those points. They don't have to be photorealistic. I don't care about that. The only thing that needs to happen is when I train on those points, they should be in this D old. They should result in the D old, the same decision boundary that was previously realized. So what can we do is, here we see that this brute force technique is very inefficient as the size of the points is very high. So consider this situation where it gets even worse. When we use this technique, let's say we have dumped a generative rehearsal and we have completely moved to this technique. This technique is not so efficient because consider this technique. Let's say this is the space and these are all class 1 points and these are all class 2 points. Now, in order to generate all the synthetic data, we will end up filling the entire space like this with all the points, and then we'll ask the neural network to classify all the points, and then it will say that all the points here are class 1 points and all the points here are class 2 points. So it'll say that the decision boundary is somewhere here. So when we train on this network, the decision boundary will be somewhere here, right? So if you see here, You didn't have to generate all these points. These are completely useless. You could have generated points just here. So if you generated all the points that were here and gave it to the neural network, it would have classified them and you would have a synthetic data, which when trained upon will result in the same decision boundary, right? So our approach, our initial attempts are in this direction. We wanted to generate synthetic data as little as possible using the mentioned technique with as computationally efficient and possible, as computationally efficient as possible. So this is a basic idea how we did it. I'll get into the algorithm in just a few minutes. So assume class 1 points are somewhere here and class 2 points are somewhere here. I don't want to generate points here. The synthetic data doesn't have to be here. If it's closer to the decision boundary, I can train on it and rehearse it. So what I initially did was we create few points called anchor points. These anchor points will be closer to the actual data. They won't be generated here. How I am generating them, I'll get to that. First, let me explain the concept. We first generate these anchor points for class 1 and then for class 2. And then what we do is these anchor points are points that are actually physically closer to the uh, actual data. What we then do is we start generating a wave of points originating from this center of the generated points. The waves start come, or you can consider it as an explosion with epicenter being the mean of these points. So we start filling the space. Even from this class, we do the same thing. Sorry. Even from this class, we do the same thing. So what does that result in? Now, since we are not generating points from all this space, we are only confined to, we are only generating points very efficiently. And these points when trained upon, all these will be class 2 points and all these will be class 1 points. So when you train on these points, the decision boundary will look something like this. So what problem is it solving? The important problem that is solving is the synthetic data generation has nothing to do with photorealism. We are not bringing photorealism into the equation here. But it is completely out. We are generating it using uh, in a brute force way, but a very educated brute force way. I mean, it's yeah, that might be the. Okay, yeah. So that is a concept. So instead of generating all the points here, now we have generated points that is actually closer to the decision boundary, right? So that is a concept behind it. So now I'll tell you how we are generating these anchor points, initial anchor points. So here it is. What our idea was that the neural network that is there here is already trained on 0 and 1 and it knows how to deal with 0 and 1, right? Now there is a new batch of data being new. What generative replay paradigm does is it creates a generator and which creates synthetic data for 0 1. Our philosophy is, why are you asking a generator? The neural network already knows how to do 0 and 1, right? So let's extract the data from this neural network itself, from the solver itself, as it is already all the statistical properties of the old data are already stored in the current neural network in form of weights. So why don't we extract the data from there itself? Why depend on a separate generator network? Why not extract it from here itself? So how are we doing that? So what we are doing is, I can get rid of this thing. What we are doing is, let's say I want to generate for two class problems, class 0 and class 1. we are using genetic algorithms here. First, let's say I want to generate points for class 0, target class is 0. What I'll do is I'll start with a random population of points. These are random points. And then, since it's a neural network, I will ask it the confidence of this sample belonging to class 0, the softmax confidence, say. So let's say something like 0.1, and this is 0.2, and this is 0.01, and this is 0.00, and this is 0.9. So what I then do is I pick the uh, fittest individuals and propagate to the next generation. The standard genetic algorithms algorithm. I pick these fittest points and give and generate propagate them to the next generation. And in that way, let's go back to the the space diagram. Let's say here you have C1 and C2. C2. The points that have been generated using this for class 0 will lie somewhere here, because we are generating points which the neural network has classified with highest confidence. We are propagating those points to the next generation which it has classified with the highest confidence. So those will be closer to the data set. And there are also a few other variables like the number of generations and everything which decide a lot of things. But right now, I'll keep the presentation simple. So these things, these are the resultant anchor points for us. In the same way, just like we generated for class 0, we'll generate it for class 1. We'll generate random population and we'll say, dear neural network, tell us which of these points look closer to class 1. And then it gives a confidence, the fittest are propagated to next generation, and that is repeated again and again and again, till we have points like these, anchor points. So how we then do the wave expansion is, we assume all of this as belonging to one Gaussian, a standard Gaussian. The other name is normal distribution, right? And then generate synthetic points here. And then the next step is we assume all of this as belonging to one Gaussian and then generate synthetic points. So that will completely fill this space. And then when we give these points to this neural network, it will again say, okay, these points belong to class 1 and these points belong to class 2. And when we train on this data, we'll get a clean decision boundary. So to visualize this effectively or to communicate this better, we tried this on blobs dataset. These are the actual results. These are not representations. These are actual results on blobs dataset. So let's assume green, red, and blue are the original points. So if you see the anchor points that are generated for green is the yellow points, for red is the pink points, and blue is the black points. And then to increase the number of points in each of, to increase the number of anchor points, we consider, can you follow my mouse? Can somebody respond?
I'm not
Uh,
sure.
you can see the mouse, right?
No, I can
Okay,
see that you're moving on top of the tabs, but I can't see the
okay,
mouse. Okay.
okay. Anyway, in this figure B, if you see genetically evolved data points, the yellow points are the anchor points for green data set, pink are the for red, and black are for the blue data points that get evolved. And if you see figure C, we assume all of them as being one Gaussian and enrich the population, increase the number of points in the population. And then finally, all of the three are considered as one Gaussian, so that this is the actual this thing. Because here, if you see, there yellow, pink, and black blobs are disconnected. When you train a neural network upon it, we might not get the same decision boundary. So to fill the gap between these blobs, I considered all of those as one Gaussian and filled points between those blobs. And this is the result. If you see, you can find this in page number, I don't know, 3. These are the points. Now, if you see something, these points, the points in black, pink, and yellow, when you train a neural network upon it, the decision boundary can classify the original data, that is green, red, and blue points. I repeat, the black, yellow, and pink points, if you train a neural network on these points, you can recognize green, red, and blue points, right? The synthetic data is having the capacity to rehearse the network so that the decision boundary is preserved, right? So let me show you some of the examples that we get when we train them on fashion data sets. These are the original fashion images, right? The fashion MNIST fashion data set. You can see the trousers, shoes, and everything. And these are the synthetic points generated by a GAN. You can see the first image is of a purse, second is a t-shirt, and something. And the third one is a population generated by us. If you observe, they look like random noise. You might ask, how can these points rehearse a network that has been trained on these points, right? Because these points are, in a way, boundary preserving. If you train on them, the same boundary gets preserved. It has nothing to do with photorealism here, right? You get the idea, right? So that is the basic idea. You don't have to run after photorealism like the GAN is trying to do. You can train this on random points, which when trained upon will will preserve the decision boundary. For example, like here, like in the previous diagram, in D, if you see D, the synthetic data is enough to rehearse it, is enough to preserve the decision boundary. So that is our philosophy. You can get rid of photorealism and generate synthetic data that preserves the boundary in many ways using educated brute force algorithm, you can call it. So coming to experiments, what we did, we conducted 3 main experiments. First one is, when we rehearse on this data, how is it retaining the previous data? How well is the retention capacity, right? It has learned some task 1 and then you're learning task 2. When you're learning task 2, if you train on task 1 data generated by our technique, how well is it retaining the task 1? And the second thing is the quantitative comparison of synthetic and original data set, right? We are claiming that the synthetic data is a good replacement for the original data, but we need to prove it, right? We conducted an experiment to prove that the synthetic data and original data are equal for the neural network because they result in the same decision boundary. And the third experiment that we did is, we are saying that when a model is trained on synthetic data, it will generated by our method is similar to a model that has been trained on original data, right? So in the third experiment, we tried to quantitatively measure, or I should say quantify the difference between two models. How different is a model that has been trained on our data versus how different is a model that has been trained on the original data. So here are the experiments that we did. The first experiment is the straightforward experiment, the straightforward one. It's very simple. We have a neural network NN that has been trained on that has been trained on fashion products first, and then it has been trained on MNIST handwritten digits. This comes second. So before training on MNIST, the synthetically generated fashion dataset, let's call it fashion dash, and it has been interleaved with digits dataset, that is MNIST, and then given to the neural network. So what we are seeing in the graph is, as this is an epoch number, as we are learning this data set, as we are going on learning this data set, how well does it remember the original data set, fashion? A straightforward experiment. So when we look at the results, the red line that you see on the top is the behavior of the neural network when you train it on original data. I mean, when you're rehearsing it with original data, that is the behavior. The blue line is the proposed technique, our proposed technique. When we are rehearsing the data on when we are rehearsing the neural network on our proposed data, this is the retention behavior. There is a slight loss of, there's a slight loss of information, but after a while, after like 15th epoch, the information loss stopped completely. If you see the third line, that is representing GAN, that is representing a neural network that has been trained on GAN generated data. So what is happening is, it's very bad, because even though the images are very photorealistic, they are not visually diverse enough to substitute for the original data set. That is what is resulting in this. That is why you see performance somewhere around 50%. As a control study, we even compared it against random data, which is in green images, where it just simply generated random vectors and gave it for pseudo rehearsal, like initially proposed by, I think it was Robbins, initially proposed by Robbins. And the final is no rehearsal at all. If you see, when you don't rehearse it, it simply collapses. It's the worst thing. Rehearsing is better. And these are the performance. So here we have seen that the retention capacity of the proposed technique is better. So here comes the interesting part of the experiment, interesting part of the paper. If you remember, here we are trying to compare the synthetic data set versus the original data set, right? So to simply put it, let's say this is the synthetic data of MNIST images, synthetic digits, and this is original. We are saying that this is equal to this, right? So how do we prove it? How do we say that this data has the same properties as this data, even though it is not visually same? So what we did is, we took 3 neural networks, randomly initialized neural networks, and then we trained the neural network on this data set. These neural networks have not seen anything before. These have been just randomly initialized. These have been trained on the synthetic data sets and have been tested on original images, original digits, something like 1, 2, and 3, and so on. So it is, what we are saying is that when you train the neural network on images that look like random noise, represented, I mean, shown in the figure, shown in subfigure A, your neural network can classify images in C. That is what we are saying. You train a network on A, it will classify images on C. That is what we are saying. If a neural network that has been trained on A can classify images in C, then that means that these images result in the same decision boundary as the original images, right? So let us see the results for it. You can find them in the page number 4. Yeah, here are the results. When you train three randomly initialized neural networks, the model 1, model 2, and model 3 stand for three randomly initialized neural networks. When they are trained on the synthetically generated data that has been generated using our technique, the accuracy reaches 82%. So the main thing is, when neural network has been trained on images that look like a random noise, they're able to classify real life images. That raises some serious questions on what the neural network is actually learning. I think this has been explored in some of they call it adversarial attacks, right? We have shown that by training on random images, you can actually classify real images that to like 82%. When you this is for fashion data sets. This is not even for digits. When you the top red line shows the neural network's performance when it has been trained on original data. When you train a neural network on original data, it reaches 90%, and you train neural network on images that look like random noise, they reach 82%. That clearly says that the generated data will result in a similar decision boundary as the original data, right? So we wanted to give a fair chance even to the GAN data. So we randomly initialized three models, three neural networks, and presented it with the GAN generated data. Now this is for fashion dataset. Please remember that if you repeat the experiment for MNIC digits, GAN can achieve 99%. Because MNIC digits is very easy dataset, but generating images for datasets that require photorealism and visual diversity is the tricky part. If you see, all the three neural networks have saturated somewhere around 23%. It has to be noted that it is statistically significant, but still the performance is very, very low. The statistical significant point is somewhere around 10%. And here you can see that they have crossed 20%. So this experiment suggests that the synthetic data generated by GAN will not result in the same decision boundary as original data, right? So this is our second experiment. You'll find it in page number 4. And coming to our third experiment, where we try to quantify models, what we are doing is we propose a simple formula, which is this. uh, to avoid all the jargon, to explain it very simply, it is like, how different are the predictions of a model that has been trained on synthetic data from a model that has been trained on original data? Something like, there is a test set, let's say test set with 10,000 images. Okay, and this is a model neural network that has been trained on synthetic data, and this is a neural network that has been trained on original data. If you test this model on the same test set, you'll get prediction 10,000 predictions, right? Here we are measuring how many of those predictions are similar. You'll have a vector here and you have a vector here, vector of predictions. We are seeing how many of those predictions match, irrespective of the correctness of the prediction. The prediction could be wrong, but here we are not concerned with the accuracy. We are seeing how many of the uh, how many of the predictions match. If lots of predictions match, then we can say that the decision boundary that has been learned by the neural network by learning this synthetic data is similar to the neural network that has learned its decision boundary from the original data. Because if, just imagine the same decision boundary, all the correct predictions will be same and all the wrong predictions will be same, because the decision boundary is same. So here we try to measure the model to model, whereas in the previous experiment we try to quantify data to data. If you see the results, when we do that for MNIST handwritten digits, the GAN data clearly outperforms. It is somewhere around 95.346, but this can be pulled to somewhere around 98. When you train a model on GAN generated data and original MNIST data, the models will agree. But the same technique does not scale to fashion products. If you see, the accuracy has dropped to 52.459% of matching, whereas ours is still in the 80.977%. The predictions are so close that it's the decision boundary that it learned is very similar, right? So here in this third experiment, we try to quantify the difference between the models, and yeah, I won't take much more time. So that is the main theme of the paper. We try to show that you can generate points that look like this, like, that look like random noise that has been shown in figure A, can be used to train, can be used as alternative synthetic data. So you might ask, what is okay? You are saying that you have generated synthetic data and you have shown the training performance is same. What is the additional benefits? The real benefits comes in the computation time required. Let me show you. If you see the amount of time that it required, the GAN required something like this. The experiment that we did is, while conducting the experiments, we simply calculated the amount of time that it took to generate equal number of points. Our technique took somewhere around 2.4 minutes, whereas GAN, in order to for the GAN to complete its training and generate synthetic points, it took around 12 minutes. Now, the interesting part is that GAN was running on a GPU and ours was running on an Intel Xeon dual core processor. On an Intel processor, it took 2.4 minutes, whereas on a GPU, it took 12 minutes. I have to point out that genetic algorithms is parallelizable and it too can run on a GPU, which will be part of our future work. So we are expecting drastic reduction in this time also. It won't even take 2 minutes. We are expecting almost 100, something like less than a minute to generate the synthetic samples. Here, it's taking 12 minutes. And to make the comparison fair, just to see how GAN runs on the same processor, we ran the same GAN technique on the same processor, and the amount of time it took was somewhere around 120 minutes. It was a 10 times increase in the amount of total amount of time that it took. The results have been graphed in this subfigure A in page number 5. Ours took 2 minutes, GAN on GPU took 12, GAN on CPU took 120 minutes. Generating random vectors as proposed by Robbins took much lesser time, but it's also not so effective, so we can avoid that, sorry. The next the next comparison was through memory, right? If you see in the whole concept of generative replay, you need an additional generator network. You always need a generator network to create your data. Whereas in our technique, you're generating the data from the solver network itself. So if you compare the memory requirements, a simple GAN requires somewhere around 35 MB. This is the size of the GAN that we created, and it was consuming somewhere around 35 MB. Whereas ours and random vectors again has zero memory requirements, as the samples are generated on the fly. I think that's the best word. The samples are generated on the fly. So I'll conclude in 2 minutes. Coming to this is the conclusion of the paper, that if you want to generate synthetic data for rehearsal, you don't have to generate photorealistic or visually diverse images and deploy GANs that consume lots of time. You can cleverly generate images that look like random noise, but when trained upon will result in a very good decision boundary. which is shown in figure sub A. The computational gains, I mean, the computational resources required is also very less, as shown in figure A and sub-figure A and sub-figure B. You can generate very high quality synthetic data that can be used for pseudo rehearsal in a very short amount of time, consuming very little memory resources. This is very important for continual learning scenario, especially when you're deploying a model on an end side, like something in a robotics environment where it has to learn things on the fly. It cannot carry a Tesla 1080 GPU on its head, or RTX 1080 GPU on its head, right? So there are few drawbacks. Even though we were able to reduce the number of points from billions to uh, we were able to reduce the points, we still needed lots of points to generate. For example, for MNIST, if you see here, this is the synthetic data generated for another blobs experiment. So for MNIST fashion, we needed somewhere around 1 million points. Fashion required somewhere around 1 million points generated by, to get the results of whatever you saw, you had to generate 1 million synthetic points. But I have to note that to keep the comparison fair, we even let GAN generate 1 million points, and the comparison was completely fair. But we want to reduce this 1 million points. 1 million points is still too high for MNIST fashion. It has to be much lesser. So our concept is that we are currently, this is the decision boundary, we are completely enveloping the decision boundary, right? We want to generate points that are much closer to the decision boundary. If we can generate data that is much closer to the decision boundary, when we rehearse on it, we'll have the same decision boundary. We don't even need all of these. Much more reduction in the data points. So what we did was, these are just initial steps on this entire data set. We fitted an SVM. We fit an SVM. I'm sure everyone is aware of it. And then how SVM works is, let's say this is class 0 and this, let's say class 1. When you fit a SVM, it finds support vectors here on which it bases its this thing. So we just filtered out those support vectors and used it for training. So the results are seen here. To visualize it, we put it here, boundary points using SVM method. Instead of training it on entire pink and yellow points, we can train on those red points alone. That will result in exactly the same decision boundary when trained upon. And one another technique that we tried was, if you see here, the softmax confidence of these points will have lesser standard deviation, right? As we go deeper and deeper, the probability of belonging to class 1 increases and class 0 decreases. So based on standard deviation, we try to filter out few points, and these are the points. These are the results. If you see, there's a clear line. Instead of billions and billions of points, there's a clear line of points. If you train on those line of points, you will definitely get the same decision boundary as training on the original data set. So let me show you for a different data set. This is for Make Moon's data set, a synthetic data set. The yellow and pink are synthetic data generated by our initial method, and this is a part of our future work. We succeed in generating points that run across the boundary. So if you see, if you train neural network on only these pink and yellow points, you will successfully be able to classify green and red points. We are yet to try this on image data sets, which will be part of our future work. And yeah, this is the final thing. We trained an neural network on the boundary points that you saw just now. So if you see, within no time they reach 100% accuracy for both the cases. These are fitted on the filtered boundary points. So yeah, that's it. That's our work, and we have submitted to ICPR, and we are waiting for the decision. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that was a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Does anyone have some questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. This is really nice work. Thank you. So
Thank
you
you.
showed how you can take a trained model that's trained on an original data set and then generate synthetic points that are preserve the boundary of that original data and the original network, I should say.
Yeah.
And then when you train on new points, you try to preserve that boundary. But what about seems like in continuous learning, you don't want to preserve the boundary exactly. When you train on new data points, you want to take advantage of those new data points. And so you want to shift the boundary in such a way that's consistent with both the old data set and the new data set. And it seems like with the
Yeah.
synthetic points, potentially, as you move if you move the boundary, they become noise and they could detract from that. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, we are trying to do one very simple thing. In any case, if you want to rehearse on the original data, you run into the same problem that you mentioned, right? Here we are providing an alternative for the original data. In few cases it will work, in few cases it won't work. In the case that you mentioned, even if you train it on the original data, you'll run into exactly the same problem.
Well,
Here
no,
yeah.
No, because if you train on the original data, you still want to be consistent with the original data. So there you don't run into the problem. It's just that the synthetic data, because it might be close to the boundary, that could cause more problems, if that makes sense. I mean, the old data is still the old data. You still want to respect that.
Okay. I think one way to look at it is, yeah, I see your point, but the final decision boundary will be exactly same, right? You train it on original data or the synthetic data that we are generating. The final decision boundary is exactly same as what you're getting with the original data, right? Here in the current method, if you ignore the future work, in the current method, if you see the data points are well spread, and then the decision boundary is same as the original data. We are trying to mimic the data points here, the decision boundary here. Whatever boundary you're getting with the original data, the same thing you'll get with the synthetic data. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Sorry. Subhatai, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. Oh, well, I think that for your question, one possible solution is to mix the synthetic generated data with the new one, just to move the boundary. Also according.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yes, my question was a little bit different. I think that the most important contribution here is the generation of the anchor points. So if I understand, you generate randomly some points and then use genetic algorithm for selecting a subset of this point and changing these points to be highly better quality than initial random generation. And I'm wondering if this can work also with more complex images, because the size of the space, size of the space increase. I think that the classes are very complex manifold in very high dimensional spaces. So if you run with random generation, maybe it's difficult to find some interesting initial point to improve with genetic algorithm. Did you experiment with more complex data?
Actually, we are trying to, the purpose of the paper is two things. The main purpose of the paper is to emphasize that we can let go of photorealism and adapt an alternative method. So the alternative method, the initial attempts is our algorithm. We would be extremely happy if somebody, completely throws off this algorithm and comes with a new thing, because we wanted to project the philosophy here that you can get rid of the photorealism. You get it, right? We are aware that the current algorithm definitely has few defects, right? But our point is to push the thing that photorealism can be avoided. Yeah, it is we ran actually before, just we are in a very severe lockdown here. When we tried to generate synthetic samples for MNIST handwritten and MNIST fashion, the same parameters that we use for genetic algorithms, like number of samples, number of generations, and the mutation rate, it worked seamlessly for fashion and digits. But when we tried to use it for CIFAR gray data set, it completely stopped. It didn't work at all. We really had to fine tune these parameters a lot. So we ran into the exact problem that you said, and we are completely aware of it. But the primary intention of our work is to show that we can safely let go of photorealism and save a lot of computation resources. Yeah, that I think says it.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
I have a question.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Which is my question is quite related to the Sabutai question. What if you have some new data who partially overlap with the point that you have calculated as a real point? So, for example, if you can go to the image on page 7.
Okay, 1 minute. Okay.
So, for example, if you have a cluster of new data in the top right corner, which is quite overlapped with the data that you use to reproduce the boundaries, did you do any test in this scenario, or no?
So the new data is overlapping with the boundary points.
Yeah,
that is what you're saying. I think that shouldn't be a problem because the label of the data is available, and the boundary will adjust accordingly, right? If the points are overlapping with the thing, and yeah, actually I have to say we have lots of parameters that need tuning here. For example, number of generations, number of points to be generated. For example, here in the boundary points, since I'm able to visualize this blobs data set, I was able to eyeball the number of points that I need to generate. When I tried the same technique for fashion data set, I couldn't eyeball it and I was running low of it. So yeah, the number of points to be generated so that it doesn't overlap, or it doesn't take too much space. If I can say, it doesn't consume so much space that it might envelop the new data set. That is still one of the parameters that need attention. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in the tables and the graphs, you were showing some. One of the entries was original data, right?
In which table, please?
Yeah, so it was like a chart.
Yeah.
If you go
This
up,
one?
maybe up.
This one?
Up probably. I mean, it's page. I think it's page. It's figure 3, number 3.
Figure 3. So yeah, this is figure 3.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, what do you mean with original data? Is it experience replay or like?
The original data is here. The experiment is first train it on fashion and then train it on digits. So when I say original data, I mean the original fashion data set, retraining it on the original 60,000 images of the fashion data.
Okay, so it's basically like a non-continual learning setup in which you have both.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so like, and for the blue line, you have like I don't know, 100 times the data points, right? Of the red line.
The blue, the orange, the green, all of them have equal number of points. 100 times more than the original data. Yeah, the 1 million.
I mean, and with the original data, it works better but it has
Yeah,
less,
it works. It definitely, there is no replacement for the original data.
so there's less memory overhead and better performance. So what's the
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
So I mean, the red line has less memory overhead and better performance. So what's the
Yeah.
advantage of the blue one?
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, that is our future efforts. If you see in this figure here, we are trying to reduce the number of points required for pseudo rehearsal further. If you see subfigure E, in
Yeah.
figure 5E, the number of points are much lesser. This is, if you see figure D, subfigure 5.D, that is our current technique. If you see figure D 5E, the number of points have significantly reduced. This is very initial stages of our research, and we are definitely trying to reduce the number of points by incorporating much more intelligence into the genetic algorithm, so that we generate points that might be much closer to the boundary. Or the other paradigm is initially generate a large number of points and then filter out the decision points that might be important for the decision boundary from there.
Okay. Okay. I
Yeah,
understand.
5D is the current thing, and 5E is our initial results with the new algorithm.
Okay. Okay. I got it. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
Anyone else? All right, so thank you again, Stor, for your interesting presentation. I think that we are
Thank
all
you.
eager to see your next, developments in this research, especially if you can
Thank you.
scale these results to, I don't know, cipher or more complex data sets. So thank you again for
I couldn't
joining.
hear you. Sorry.
Oh, I said we are eager to see if you're gonna be able to scale these algorithms to, more complex data sets.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
keep us updated.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I'd like to take this opportunity. Anybody, if you're interested, we are open for collaborations. We are a relatively new university, well funded, so well funded by the government. So any collaborations, we are open. Any comments on the paper also, we are open. If you're interested, just message me. I'm open for collaboration.
Okay, thank you again, and see you guys next week on Friday for the next reading group session.
Yeah.
Thank you, and have a good weekend.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.